To start work on the microcontroller that will control your SeaGlider, dig out the SeaGlide parts kit number 4, Arduino Pro Mini. We're not going to grab everything out of the bag. We're just going to grab some items. Leave the rest inside your bag so you don't lose them. We're going to get the socket 8 pins here. That's this thing. And we need to get the infrared receiver. Looks like that. The RGB LED. The 6-pin sockets, right angle sockets here, female headers. Of course, we need the Arduino Pro Mini board right here. And you should have some right angle headers here from our last tutorial where you were working on the printed circuit board for the glider. The rest of the parts just leave in your number 4 kit bag, and you'll come back to them later. So the first step is to use the male header pins here as sort of a tool to help us hold the female headers in place. So I'm going to dump these out. And I'm going to put about half of them here. See, it looks about like that. And the other half right here. I'm going to try to. Oh, I just broke it. Oh no. Well, I'm going to take this and set it aside and use this one to hold everything together. And I think I'm going to pull them apart a little bit so that I don't break it again. I'm not going to push it in all the way. That looks pretty good. And now I need my Arduino Pro Mini. I'm going to orient it so that the button is facing down, and then I'm going to fit all of these headers in this side of the board. I'm going to try to. Looks like it's a bit of a tight fit here. But there we go. It looks like I got it. Okay. Now I want to have it at a pretty steep angle so that it wraps around that buoyancy engine. It's going to have to fit circular. It'll be a circular fit inside that water bottle. It'll be a tight fit, so we want to do everything we can to make it go a little bit smoother by getting a good angle there. I am going to hold this in place with my hand when I make the first few solder the first few connections. If you read the instructions, the PDF for this, they mention using a vise, and I highly recommend that if you have a vise available. I don't. And I've been soldering for a long time, and I kind of have a handle on how to do something like this and have it actually turn out nice. I would recommend you use every single bit of extra help you can get when you're doing soldering, especially the first time around, because it can be pretty tricky. Now, before I even try to solder with this tip, I'm going to clean it again. And then just feed it in just like that. Okay, I'm going to do the other end here. And it's hard to see that I'm actually applying pressure on the female headers there, the sockets, to make sure they turn out to have a angle when I'm done, but I am. Let's take a look and see what that looks like now before I move any further. So it's got a nice angle there. That should work. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit more here, or move my camera, not zoom in, so you can get a little bit of a better idea of how to solder these. You can see I'm doing just a little bit on the tip, then moving to the next hole. Make sure you don't touch your iron to the housing here, it will melt. So I'm going to twist it a little bit so that that's less likely to happen. And when you're all done, it should look something like that. The next step is to solder your right angle headers in place. You saw me break mine, but luckily I had some more on hand. I am going to cut these so that I have 6 left. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 should be right there. I'm pretty confident in my ability to count, but as a student or as a first timer, I highly recommend you fit before you cut, because I've seen several students make the mistake and cut something one too short, and then you just wasted all those. So before I solder, I'm going to use my pen to paint those, and I'm going to paint these little pins here too. If soldering looks like it's easy for me, it's because during this video, I have followed the best practices, which is to use flux for pretty much every single thing you solder. And I clean the tip regularly. If you're having trouble soldering, you probably need to make sure you're cleaning your tip frequently. That's the biggest mistake I see students make. And you'll notice I made a solder bridge right here. To fix that, all I'm going to do is just drag my iron right through that spot a couple times, and eventually I'll remove enough solder that they're 2 separate connections. Soldering bridges are very common when you're first starting. Don't be concerned if you have one, just fix it. So that's what it should look like when you're done. Now you are ready to add your socket pins. You definitely want to use tape to hold that in place because it needs to be at an angle. So I'm ripping off a little piece of tape here, and I'm lining it up so that it pulls those sockets to the side there. And again, I'm using flux. And I'm cleaning my tip. And since it's stuck to my finger, I think I'm going to use my helping hand again here just to help make things a little easier for me. getting the solder bent at the right angle so it feeds in for you is one of the tricks. And once you're all done, it should look something like that. At this point, you should, over a trash can with this face facing down over the trash can, you should go ahead and clip all of your pins. Again, I'm using my tissue here just to keep them from shooting out, because I don't want to have to move my camera over a trash can to show you this part. But that's all I'm doing. Get it close, but not too close. If you cut it flush, you might actually mess up one of the pads. This is what it should look like when you're all done. The next step is to take your infrared receiver and we're going to cut the leads on this in half. So right about like this, and I'm actually going to grab those leads because when I cut, those are the things that are going to shoot off. And then I need to plug it into my Pro Mini. I want the curved part facing out so that we can control it with our infrared remote. So I'm going to plug it in right here. And then bend it just like that. The next thing we need is our RGB LED. And with this, we're actually going to have to mark it. Each pin corresponds to a color except for the longest pin. The longest pin corresponds to ground. So this longer pin here, we want to mark that so that we know it's ground. To mark the long pin of the RGB LED so that I know which one is ground after I cut it, I had grabbed a Sharpie and I'm marking that one right there in the middle. Don't mark the other ones like I just did. Try to get just the ground pin here. I'm getting it on all sides so that I'll be able to tell which is which. Again, when you cut the leads on this LED, hold the ones that are going to shoot off in your hand. And then we actually need to use our pliers to bend these guys apart a little bit. So I'm going to bend this out a little bit and then bend it back like that. And then I'll bend this one out a little bit and bend it back. And I'll do the same thing over here. Should look something like that. I think I overbent one of these, But we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like here. So when I plug this into my Arduino Pro Mini circuit here, I should have two that have no color on them, and then the ground one right there. This is hard to see. I'm going to see if I can get my camera to focus a little bit better for you. Oh, there it goes. So I'm going to plug in those three on that left side. And then I got to reach this guy way over here. I'm going to use my pliers to help me on this last one. There we go. And I'm going to really push that in there. I want to really jam those in there. I don't think I put this part in enough, so I'm going to push that in a little bit more too. Put it back where it goes. Jam that in there, and I'm going to bend that to the side too. So when I'm all done, this is what my Pro Mini should look like. And when I plug it into my circuit, my printed circuit board for the glider, it should fit just like this. There we go. And not quite as much curve as I wanted on the circuit board side, but I can bend that now a little bit now that I have some headers to help me out, and I got a little bit more rotation there. See if I can get it to focus. A little too close. I'll pull the camera up here a little bit. Let's see if we can get a good focus on that bend. Yeah, you can see what that looks like. A little bit there. So now you have a finished buoyancy engine controller.